Welcome back to Weird Stuff in a Can. Today we've got a couple of cans I brought back from Spain. We've got wild mushrooms and tripe. So yeah, as I say, recent trip to Spain in October I think it was, I brought back a couple of cans of stuff. Well, I've had tripe stew before from Spain. The last one of these I had actually was really good. It had chickpeas in it. It was tripe and garbanzo. This is just traditional recipe tripe stewed with minimal spices and flavourings. This is wild mushrooms. These are saffron milkcaps. Now, I've never eaten saffron milkcaps before. I've found them a couple of times when I've been out foraging, but actually not in any quantity or quality worth picking. So I've seen these in the wild a couple of times. They are a highly prized mushroom throughout Europe, actually, the saffron milkcap. They are very much sought after. They grow in association with pine trees, which is not my typical foraging environment, but I do sometimes forage on the edge of pine forests. This year, later this year, late summer, I'm going to get out and see if I can find some saffron milkcaps. But in the meantime, we've got some in a can. Ingredients are Rovellon entero, whole Rovellon, which is the name for saffron milkcaps, Lactarius deliciosus, 51%, water, salt, and acidifier, which is E330, citric acid. That's it. So it's just kind of canned mushrooms in water with salt and a little bit of acidity. So these are going to be boiled basically because that's what the canning process does. I'm not quite sure how that's going to affect the mushrooms because, well, actually, I understand that this variety of mushrooms is very often stewed anyway, so perhaps that'll be okay. And this is the tripe stew, traditional recipe. We've got tripe from cows, 73%, gelatin from skin, so gelatin, hide gelatin basically, water, pork fat, maize flour, spices and salt. Contains natural sugars. So yeah, this is just tripe, and doesn't it look super weird? This kind of honeycombed thing is very typical of tripe. Tripe, if you're not familiar with the term, is the stomach of a cow. So it's an organ meat, and amongst all of the organ meats, it's the one that is most regarded with suspicion where I live. Although people did used to eat it a lot here, it's fallen quite out of favour here in the UK. It's still very, very popular in the Mediterranean, and for good reason. It's delicious. I've had it before, as I say. The texture takes a little bit of getting used to sometimes. Anyway, let's open up this can of mushrooms and see what we got here first. So, for some reason, people seem to think that pull tab on the can is mandatory. They prefer a can opener. So, lots of mushrooms in there, actually. That's more than I expected. Let's get a couple of them out so we can have a good poke around and a good look at them. So, there we go. These are wild mushrooms, Lactarius deliciosus. Got to say, that one doesn't really look much like anything out of the ordinary, but that one you can see the kind of funnel shape of the mushroom. Let's have a sniff. They just kind of smell neutral and slightly sweet. And I'm thinking that a stew combining tripe and these wild mushrooms could be quite nice. So I'm going to cut a few of these up and I'm going to heat them up with the tripe. Anyway, on to the tripe now. Let's open this up and have a look. And this I expect to find that this will be set into a solid block of jelly in here because it's got the gelatin, that hide gelatin, I think if that's the right term. So, yeah. So this is set into a very rubbery block. We can see from the colour here that probably, in all likelihood, one of those spices is paprika. Let's have a sniff. Yeah, so it just smells deeply savoury and meaty. And it's got that kind of canned meat vibe to it, but in a good way. I'm going to take out a piece of tripe just so we can have a look at it. I'm not going to try this cold today. I normally do. I might just try a little bit of the gelatin cold. Obviously, this is... there's a stringy bit there. Obviously, this is meant to be heated up, but I do normally taste things straight out of the can, just, I don't know, out of force of habit these days now. Anyway, flavour is really good. It's got a smoky, sort of meaty flavour. Nothing to dislike there. The thing that people will probably dislike the most, if they try this and they're not familiar with it, is the texture. It can tend to be a little bit kind of rubbery and cartilaginous and, you know, chewy. And that's not to everybody's taste, but I don't mind it. Anyway, I'm going to take this down to the kitchen, get it warmed up. I'm going to slice up some of these mushrooms and put them in there as well. And I think I'm just going to serve the two things together. So, back in a moment. Okay then, back from the kitchen. So, now I've mixed in my sliced mushrooms with the tripe, which I just warmed in a pan. The instructions on the can said you can warm the traditional way, which I assume is this, or in a microwave, but I've just done it in a pan so I could put the mushrooms in as well. Now, I'm aware, of course, that the flavour of the tripe is probably going to overwhelm the flavour of the mushrooms. So, just so I could give those a fair taste, I've warmed a couple of these mushrooms up on their own, so we can give that a little taste. So yeah, it is a different kind of mushroom to what you'd normally, you know, to your normal shop-bought mushrooms. There's no difference really in smell. It's very mild, slightly fruity, maybe slightly sour. Tasting time. Quite good actually. Firm, meaty, good mushroomy, wild mushroom aroma. Yeah, nice kind of little fruity and earthy and woody notes in there. I actually think that's pretty good. So definitely going to be looking out for some of these this year, foraging. I've got some nice fresh baked bread to go with my stew. I think I might do this all on the tray here actually, just because it could get a bit messy. So the tripe stew. Now here's the tripe. Here's a piece of tripe looking very tripey. So that honeycomb texture, that's the stomach lining of the cow. So we'll get some of the mushrooms. Obviously some of the tripe. The dog has been going absolutely crazy while I've been preparing this. She obviously likes the smell of it. And since there's no garlic or onions or anything in here, I think I'm probably quite safe. Well, at least there's not much. Oh, right, so that's the pieces of... Okay. So this could be actually pieces of skin, of hide, because it did say that it was made with gelatin from hide, but that looks like... I don't know, maybe it's just a different bit of tripe. Anyway, I need to get stuck into this before it sets up, because as soon as this cools down, it is going to set solid and back into a block of rubbery gelatin, like ballistic gel or something. I think we should try that piece of tripe there. So, yeah, it doesn't come apart very easily. And there it is. So, let's have a sniff while it's nice and hot now. So, some new aromas have come out. There's a kind of almost a cheesiness to it. Anyway, tasting time. Really good. The flavour is amazing. Really meaty flavour. Despite not having a particularly meaty texture, there is a really, really meaty flavour. There's a chew to it, which not everybody's going to like, but then if you like mushrooms, you probably wouldn't mind the texture of tripe. It's quite similar, sort of chewy, rubbery bite to it. Let's try a piece of this thicker stuff. That's quite different, and that does make me think that maybe that is a piece of skin rather than tripe. That one had a kind of a really melty, gelatinous rubberiness to it. Okay, and then the mushrooms in this lovely sauce. Does that work? Oh yeah, that's actually a superb combo. And I imagine it will also go very well. Just a little bit of bread to mop that up. That's so good. So, as I say, I've had tripe before. I've had Spanish chaos is the Spanish name for it. Not chaos, chaos. If I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure somebody will tell me if I'm not. I've also had some Eastern European versions of tripe, so flaki, which is I think is from Poland. Pretty sure I've had another version of it, but not Italian. So I haven't tried the Italian and Mexican versions of tripe. I imagine they're all kind of similar because it's about stewing the tripe in spices and flavourings. But I look forward to trying the Italian and the Mexican presentations of this organ meat. Because honestly, once you get over the idea of it being, you know, a piece of an animal that you don't normally eat, the flavour is just stupendous. It is so lovely and deeply savoury. And that's not just coming from the salt and the spices that have been put with this. That's actually from the tripe. That's really good. I wish I brought a few more cans of that back now. Never mind, next time I will know what to shop for. And these wild mushrooms, I do think they go in here. I think their subtle, distinctive flavour is slightly lost in this stew, but, you know, any mushrooms I think would go okay in here. But there is a slightly different texture to these mushrooms as well. There is an interesting slight crispness to them. And it's probably worth acknowledging the canned version of anything is not necessarily going to be the same as the freshly made. So certainly the canned mushrooms, the wild mushrooms, if I was to go out and pick and forage or be served some saffron milk caps that have been cooked from fresh, I'm sure that'd be a different experience and probably better. And similarly with tripe, although to a lesser extent with tripe, because this is a product that does lend itself to being canned, because canning is essentially pressure cooking and stewing all in one. And so pressure cooking and stewing tripe in spices and flavourings is probably a good way to present it. I think I would like to try it, you know, in a restaurant or cafe sometime, cook from fresh, but I think from a can it's actually pretty good, just because it's the kind of thing that really does lend itself to the cooking method that canning implies. So I think the mushrooms are probably going to get like an 8 out of 10 from me. Actually, I really enjoyed them. They're nice and they are distinctive and they're different from just the mushrooms I can buy in the supermarket, as well as different from just standard canned mushrooms. The tripe, I think, gets a 10 out of 10. It's delicious. It really is delicious. It's meaty. It's tasty. It feels really nourishing and warming. It's actually not as rubbery in texture as you might think. It's more like something that's really tenderly meaty. I have a little dog waiting behind my shoulder here. So I think we will pick out, yeah, there she goes. I think we will pick out a little bit of tripe and see how Eva reacts to it. Can I have a little paw? Thank you. Is that good? Yeah, you're looking to see if there's another bit, aren't you? Thank you. Whoops. You weren't going to let that hit the floor, were you? No, that's it now. Good girl. That's it. Good girl. Did you like that? So there we go. That was traditional recipe tripe and saffron milk caps with stuff in a can from Spain. I hope this has been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.